Hare Krishna. Bhagavad Gita as it is. Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Bhagavad Gita, chapter number 2, contents of the Gita summarized, verse number 27. Jatasya hi dhruvo mrityur dhruvam janma mritasya cha tasmat apariharyarthe natvam chochitumarhasi. One who has taken his birth is sure to die, and after death one is sure to take birth again. Therefore, in the unavoidable discharge of your duty, you should not lament. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. One has to take birth according to one's activities in life. And after finishing one's term of activities, one has to die to take birth for the next. In this way, one is going through one cycle of birth and death after another without liberation. This cycle of birth and death does not, however, support unnecessary murder, slaughter, and war. But at the same time, violence and war are inevitable factors in human society for keeping law and order. The battle of Kurukshetra, being the will of the Supreme, was an inevitable event, and to fight for the right cause is the duty of a Kshatriya. Why should he be afraid of or aggrieved at the death of his relatives, since he was discharging his proper duty? He did not deserve to break the law, thereby becoming subjected to the reactions of sinful acts, of which he was so afraid. By avoiding the discharge of his proper duty, he would not be able to stop the death of his relatives, and he would be degraded due to his selection of the wrong path of action. Verse number 27 reinstates the fact that everyone who is born has to die. It is said that death is the most undeniable truth of life. The one who has taken birth will surely die. So if that is the sure thing, then why should one avoid doing his duty? Especially this is for a Kshatriya whose duty is to fight a religious war. Why would a Kshatriya avoid the war? Because death and birth are repeated realities of life. At the same time, just because death is a reality, it is there for sure, that does not give you a license to kill unnecessarily. Moving on to verse number 28. Avyaktadini bhutani vyakta madhyani bharata avyakta nidhananyeva tatra ka paridevana. All created beings are unmanifest in their beginning, manifest in their interim state, and unmanifest again when annihilated. So what is the need for lamentation? Purport: accepting that there are two classes of philosophers, one believing in the existence of soul and the other not believing the existence of soul, there is no cause for lamentation in either case. Non-believers in the existence of the soul are called atheists by the followers of Vedic wisdom. Yet, even if for the argument's sake we accept this atheistic theory, there is still no cause for lamentation. Apart from the separate existence of the soul, The material elements remain unmanifested before the creation. From this subtle state of non-manifestation comes manifestation, just as from ether air is generated, from air fire is generated, and from fire water is generated, and from water earth become manifest. From the earth many varieties of manifestations take place. So here in the beginning we are told that there are two types of philosophers, one who believes in the existence of soul and one who does not believe in the existence of the soul, which was discussed in the previous purport also. Both these people don't have a cause for lamentation. As said before, either the soul exists. If the soul exists, then what is the nature of the soul? The soul is permanent, it never dies. So then you don't have to lament or grieve for anybody because they died. The other option is the soul does not exist, in which case you don't believe in the existence of a soul, you don't believe in the spiritual part of life, you just believe that the body is all that there is, and body, we all know, is made up of matter, chemicals, physical matter. So if that is all there is, then with your the body ends everything, and you don't have to feel sorry for that, because with your body you also end. But we know that the soul exists. So the material elements, so before we become manifest, we are unmanifest, in the unmanifest state. Then we become manifest. Then we again become unmanifest, and that is a cycle that repeats. Manifest means comes into existence, and here the example is given of how each of the Pancha Mahabhut is created. From the ether, air comes. From the air, fire is generated. Science already accepts the fact that in order for fire to happen, there should be air. You can perform a simple experiment. You can light a candle and you can cover the candle with something. The candle extinguishes. We did that in physics in primary school. So air is needed for fire. So from ether, air is generated, from air fire is generated, and from fire water is generated. And how does that happen? You can see that when something is boiled, fire gives rise to steam, and if you capture the steam, then you see water droplets. So fire generates water, and from water earth is generated, and from earth everything, all the things that we see around us is generated. From earth, many varieties of manifestation take place. Take, for example, a big skyscraper manifested from the earth. When it is dismantled, the manifestation becomes again unmanifest and remains as atoms in the ultimate stage. The law of conservation of energy remains, but in course of time, things are manifested and unmanifested. That is the difference. So this is an example which everybody can understand. Things are created for some time, they manifest for some time, then they become unmanifest. Like there would be a huge building one day, and the next day it is demolished, and all the bricks and mortar, they made into powder and they go back into earth, and then it is in their unmanifest state. Tomorrow that building can be again made, so it becomes manifest again. Then what cause is there for lamentation, either in the stage of manifestation or in unmanifestation? Somehow or the other, even in the unmanifest stage, things are not lost. Both in the beginning and at the end, all elements remain unmanifested. and only in the middle are they manifested, and this does not make any real material difference. So there is some class of philosophers who believe that, especially the Advaita philosophy, they say that the Brahmam Satyam Jagat Mithya. They categorically deny everything in the Jagat as Mithya, as illusion. But there is a difference in Vaishnava philosophy. The Jagat is not Mithya. Jagat is not illusion. It is very much real. You see the stones and the bricks and the walls, everything is real. You can't say it's unreal. Yes, it is real, but it's temporary. That is the key word, temporary. Material manifestation is real, but temporary. It remains for some time, then it becomes unmanifested. So you cannot say it's unreal. For example, look at the clouds in the sky. They remain for some time. They are there when they are there, and then they disappear. That does not make it unreal. So it's temporary is the word for the material world. And if we accept the Vedic conclusion as stated in the Bhagavad Gita that these material bodies are perishable in due course of time, antavanta ime deha, but that the soul is eternal, nitya syukta sharirina, then we must remember always that the body is like a dress. Therefore, why lament the changing of a dress? The material body has no factual existence in relation to the eternal soul. It is something like a dream. In dream, we may think of flying in the sky or sitting on a chariot as a king, but when we wake up, we can see that we are neither in the sky nor seated on the chariot. The Vedic wisdom encourages self-realization on the basis of the non-existence of the material body. Therefore, in either case, whether one believes in the existence of the soul or one does not believe in the existence of the soul, there is no cause for lamentation for the loss of the body. So, a beautiful example is that of a dream. We all have the experience of dreaming. At night we go to bed and we have beautiful dreams. Sometimes we have nightmares. Imagine you go to bed at 10 o'clock at night and you're dreaming. At 12 o'clock you inherited a big lottery, or you got a big lottery of $1 million. At 12 p.m. at night you are a multi-millionaire with millions of dollars. Then at 1 o'clock you dream that a thief has broken into your house and taken all the money. At 1 o'clock you lose all the money. So at 2 o'clock in dream you are out on the street and you are a beggar. Okay? And then you wake up in the morning at 6 o'clock and you think, oh, that was just a dream. You got the money and you lost the money. Everything happened in the dream. So you know that there is no existence to that. It was just a dream. All of us have that experience. We can dream anything, but it doesn't have an existence. That dream was a 6-hour dream, and this dream that we are living is a 60 years dream. It is just a matter of time. That dream at night is of a shorter duration, and this dream that you're dreaming right now, that you are in this body, you're a man, you're a woman, you're this, you're so and so, this and that, your name, fame, your address, it's all a dream. It's just a longer dream. It has 60 years or 70 years or 80 or 100 years of duration. Nevertheless, it's just a dream. When you die, you will quickly forget it, just as we forget the dream that we dream at night. When you die, you will look back and you'll just brush it off. Oh, that was just a dream. This whole life that you lived will seem like a dream. So no point in taking it seriously. Again, the Vedas does not call it illusion. It is temporary. It's dream-like. You see, the dreams are real in a way, because your subtle body experiences those things. Sometimes we see nightmare, okay? We see a snake or a tiger and our body reacts to it. You start sweating, you start shivering in your dream because your body reacts to that, whatever you're dreaming. It is very real for the body, but it's because your subtle body, your sukshma sharira, is experiencing those things in the dream. So they're very real for at that time. But when you wake up, it is all brushed away like it's not real. So our lifetime, what we are experiencing, please don't be overly serious about it. Learn to laugh it off as a dream, because it is, believe me. And that was the verse number 27 and 28 of Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter number 2, contents of the Gita summarized. Up till verse number 30. Tomorrow we will do 29 and verse number 30. 2 more verses we will be discussing about the nature of the soul. From chapter number 2, from verse number 11 to 30 is the description of the soul. What is the soul? What is its nature and its comparison with the material body, and so on. Hope you have understood something and benefited in some way. Please give me your feedback. I look forward to reading your comments. Please give a thumbs up if you like the video, and feel free to share it with your friends and family. And remember to subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for being there and for listening. See you next time. Bhagavad Gita ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Till next time, Hare Krishna.